the former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been the longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel. And for Americans, we haven't heard much from the Prime Minister, but you should know he's running for Prime Minister, and my fingers are crossed because we need a strong Israel. And he has written a book that is so fantastic. It's called Bibi, My Story, Bibi, My Story. And you know what? It's Israel's story. It's America's story. It's the world's story. It is so readable and understandable. It's a narrative where he walks through from early in his life up to really current day. And it's very fascinating, interesting, the interaction with various American presidents and secretaries of states and so forth. And I want to start, not at the beginning, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to start with something that is existential to both of our countries, and that is this regime in Iran. Now, President Trump pretty much had his foot on the throat of this regime. He got rid of the deal that the Obama administration had negotiated. President Biden is in there begging the same regime to sign something, anything, even though this regime keeps thumbing its nose at the United States and is working at breakneck speed to get their nukes. What do you make of this?
I think it'll be the height of folly to enable Iran to get nuclear weapons. I think what we're seeing in the world today is the danger of having aggression armed with nuclear weapons. Now, Iran, the Ayatollahs with nuclear weapons, is going to be the worst thing that you can possibly imagine. They chant death to Israel, but they also chant death to America. We're the small Satan, you're the big Satan. If they develop nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to every one of your cities, then you will be held hostage forever. You've already seen what it's like when you have a rogue regime like North Korea have nuclear weapons, and half of Asia is quaking in fear, and they just fired a missile over the skies of Japan, and they could possibly reach you too. But to have the Ayatollahs that are committed to the destruction of our way of life and are chanting death to America, to have them have nuclear weapons is nothing short of folly. And it has to be stopped. I've devoted a lot of my time to stopping it. And I think that any responsible policy on the part of the United States should do that. It shouldn't facilitate this Iran deal, which basically paves a highway with gold, with billions of dollars for Iran to become a threshold nuclear state. It should work the opposite. It should put crippling sanctions on Iran and a credible military threat to prevent them from acquiring the weapons of mass death.
Do you think the administration in Israel, headed by Lapid, has been effective in confronting Iran?
No, I don't. I think that they give lip service to the opposition to the upcoming nuclear deal because the majority of the public is against it. But the way that you galvanize this opposition is to go to the UN, as I did, and draw a red line, to go to the U.S. Congress, as I did, which was a very difficult decision, to go to a joint session of Congress and to oppose the policies of a sitting president where the United States is our indispensable ally wasn't an easy thing to do. I write about it in my book of memoirs. I debated with myself long and hard, but I said when you have a regime that is openly calling for the annihilation of the Jewish state, is openly trying to develop atomic bombs to that effect, then I had no choice. And I did it in every forum, in every television program, in every meeting with leaders. I wish I'd see that now. I don't, but that doesn't change the fact that Iran's nuclear weapons threaten us, but they also threaten you, and they threaten the peace of the world. You do not want a fanatical Islamist regime to be armed with nuclear weapons.
The book is Bibi, My Story. You can get it at bbmystory.com, bbmystory.com. You can get it at Amazon.com. Any major bookstore in the United States, you can get it as well. What was your relationship, and you write about these things in the book, I want Americans and others to know this in much more detail. What was your relationship like with Barack Obama?
Well, it started out actually in a superintendent's or janitor's office in Reagan National Airport in Washington. I was leaving Washington, he was coming out, he was a senator then. And we actually had a good meeting. And I looked forward to cooperating with him in case he would be elected. I was running, he was running. When we both got elected, We met again in Israel. And I said, look, he said to me what I said to him. We both come out of opposite sides of the political spectrum, but, we're pragmatic enough to work together for our country's interests. At least so I hoped. But, and in some things we did. But I think on the Iran question and on the Palestinian question, our ways parted. And I thought that Obama was not a weak person. I thought he was strongly committed to his beliefs. They were just, in my opinion, on these crucial matters, the wrong beliefs. So we had an inevitable clash when I realized that he was pursuing a deal with Iran that nominally is supposed to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, but in fact was not even kicking the can forward. It was allowing Iran, with American and international seal of approval, to develop to become a threshold nuclear state, with a breakout time that Obama himself would be zero in a few years. He said that on a PBS interview. Breakout time to a nuclear weapon. So, I thought, this is something I can't accept. I can't accept the idea of containing in Iranian nuclear weapons. I believe in preventing Iran from having nuclear weapons. And I sought to apply everything I had, including, when necessary, taking the very difficult decision of confronting a sitting American president and his policies. And I did it.
And then Joe Biden, finally, on this subject. You were prime minister for a period of time when he was president, and you have Hamas raining missiles down on your country, and you talk about this in your book, BB My Story. What was Joe Biden's reaction?
Well, Biden, whom I've known for many years, for 40 years, since he was a young senator in Washington, and I came there as the deputy ambassador, he always says, Bibi, I love you, but I don't agree with a word you say. And I said to him, Joe, sometimes I reciprocate that. So initially he agreed when Hamas was firing rockets at Israel, and we retaliated, obviously, and tried to knock out their missile launchers, which they emplaced in civilian neighborhoods. Initially, it was supportive, and he was supportive throughout of our right to exercise self-defense, but he was under great pressure from a certain wing of the Democratic Party, so he started saying, you got to end it. And I said, no, Joe, I got to keep on going until we accomplish our objectives. And it took about 10 days for us to accomplish our objectives. But eventually, I would say the American pressure and the Israeli action met at the point where we had completed our objectives. So we stopped. We didn't get to the point of confronting it. I think that Biden is sympathetic to Israel, but I think that his policy on this, unfortunately, reflects his policy on the Palestinian question and on Iran, I think, is also misdirected. And I'm trying to be a diplomat here, but I think it's just wrong. It's wrong for America to effectively seek to contain an Iranian nuclear weapon, to say, well, they're going to have it anyway, so let them have it. No, they have to be stopped. You don't want a regime that believes in the destruction of America to have the means to carry out that action or to even threaten you with that. That's something that will not advance peace. And I think that you need strong leadership to reinstate a credible military threat on Iran. It's the only thing that will stop them. And if you look at the rogue countries, okay, and I write this in my book, look at the rogue countries that try to develop nuclear weapons. One was Saddam Hussein's Iraq. It was stopped by Israeli military action. The second was Syria. That was also stopped by Israeli military action. The third was Libya. That was stopped by the threat of American military action. Gaddafi stopped his program, fearing that he would be taken out. The fourth was North Korea. There was no military threat. There was a series of agreements which North Korea violated, and the result is they have a nuclear arsenal which can threaten you. And the fifth is Iran, that for 1 year alone, after the second Gulf War, thought that America would take action against it, so they suspended their nuclear program. After a year, they realized there's no such threat, so they've been going at it. And as I said, I've devoted a good many years, including all my tenures as prime minister, to do everything in my power to stop them through military action, Mossad operations, political action, stop them through programs like this. I think that it requires also American leadership to stop Iran, to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons, and the proposed agreement is the opposite of what is required.
It looks like President Trump realized that and understood that and got out of that Iran deal and put economic sanctions on Iran. Looks like he saw the same with the Palestinians. He cut off funding for the Palestinians. He could see that even Abbas, that they were applying money to terrorist activities and so forth and so on. And then the Biden administration reverses course almost across the board, adopts the Obama policies and institutes those. And so now we have a situation where the Palestinians are committing more acts of terrorism against Israelis. The Saudis are moving towards the Chinese and the Russians. You had more peace deals, 4, during your prime ministership than all the prime ministers combined before you. Sounds to me like we're heading in the wrong direction with Lapid and the Biden administration, no?
Well, I hope we can change that direction in a few weeks, but of course it depends on the result of the elections. But yes, look, for a quarter of a century, the prevalent wisdom among the elites in Israel and the West was that the only way that Israel will break out to have more peace agreements with Arab countries is by having an agreement with the Palestinians, peace with the Palestinians. Now, that may sound logical, but it wasn't actually, because it placed an impossible barrier. The Palestinians didn't want peace with Israel. They wanted peace without Israel. They didn't want a state next to Israel. They wanted a state instead of Israel. So they vetoed any peace agreements. After the 2 peace agreements we had with Egypt and with Jordan, for 25 years we couldn't get any peace agreements because everybody mouthed this slogan, well, you got to have peace with the Palestinians. And I said no. In fact, it's the other way around. You don't let the Palestinian tail wag the body of the Arab world. What you do is you go around the Palestinians and you make peace with the broader Arab world, and then maybe you'll get the Palestinians to curb their their rejectionism to Israel. And that's what we ended up doing. And it happened because of the increased power of Israel that we had been able to achieve through economic reforms of free markets, through military reforms, and through diplomatic prowess that combined the two. So it's peace through strength, through the iron triangle of peace. Economic strength, military strength, diplomatic strength. It paved the way for 4 historic peace agreements.
When we come back, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to pursue that, the iron triangle of strength, hard power, soft power. You write about all this in your book. The book is BB My Story. You can get it at bbmystory.com, bbmystory.com, or amazon.com, or any major bookstore. I strongly encourage you to get it. It comes out Tuesday. You can order it immediately, and it'll show up on your steps on Tuesday. It is a fantastic book.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.